Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are digging deep into the very foundation of how we think. We're going to break down the different kinds of beliefs we all hold, and maybe more importantly, how we actually justify them.
It seems like such a simple question, right? But the moment you start to really pull at that thread, things can get complicated and fast. This whole explainer is about unpacking that complexity. And hey, by the end, we're going to build a simple toolkit to help you find your own answers.
I mean, think about it. We believe the sun will rise tomorrow, we believe in certain moral truths, we believe our friends have our back. But are all those beliefs built on the same kind of foundation? Well, when we act like they are, that's where we get into trouble. It leads to a ton of confusion and some seriously unproductive arguments. Because, as we're about to see, not all beliefs are created equal.
So, where does all that confusion start? Well, it really begins with how we justify what we believe. And the first huge distinction we have to make, the one that really sets the stage for everything else, is the split between the empirical and the extra-empirical.
Okay, so on one side you've got empirical justification. This is all based on evidence from the world around us, stuff you can see, touch, measure, and test. You can think of it as the absolute bedrock of science. Then, on the other side, you have extra-empirical justification. This comes from more internal places, like pure reason, deep intuition, or faith. These are foundational ideas you just can't put under a microscope.
And just think about some of our deepest, most profound beliefs. The existence of a higher power, that feeling that we have free will, or a core moral principle like, it's better to be good than evil. These ideas can shape our entire lives, but you can't really design an experiment to prove or disprove them. They're just coming from a totally different place of justification.
Now, when we're talking about those empirical, evidence-based beliefs, we need a way to sort the really strong claims from the weak ones. And this brings us to an incredibly powerful tool for doing just that, the concept of falsifiability. So first up, let's talk verifiable. This one's pretty straightforward. It just means, can you find evidence out there that supports your belief? If you believe some swans are white, all you got to do is find one white swan, and bam, your belief is verified. Easy enough.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. A belief is falsifiable if you can imagine some observation that could prove it wrong. Now, this doesn't mean it is wrong. It just means it's testable in the real world. This idea is an absolutely key ingredient for any real scientific claim. And that, of course, brings us to unfalsifiable. A belief is unfalsifiable if there's just no conceivable experiment or observation that could ever prove it's false. A lot of those really profound extra-empirical beliefs we looked at, like I have free will, they fall right into this category. There's just no lab test for freedom.
All right, let's make this super concrete with a classic example from the philosophy of science. Just consider this simple, seemingly obvious statement. All crows are black.
So imagine you go out and you see a million black crows. You've gathered an absolute mountain of verifying evidence. But does that actually prove the statement all crows are black is true forever and for all time? Nope. It only confirms what you've seen so far. Verification, it turns out, has its limits.
So what if we flip the question? Instead of desperately trying to prove the statement is true, what would it actually take to prove that it's false?
Just one. A single albino crow, a gray crow, finding just one non-black crow would instantly shatter that universal claim. And that is the power of falsifiability. A claim is scientifically strong not because it's easy to keep proving it right, but because we know exactly what we would need to find to prove it wrong.
So we've looked at the type of justification, empirical or not, and we've looked at how to test a claim. But there's one more layer here. How do we come to know something in the first place? This brings us to a really cool distinction between a priori and a posteriori knowledge.
Over on the left, we have a priori knowledge. This is stuff you know just by thinking about it. It's justified through reason alone, totally independent of any particular experience. You don't need to go out and measure a bunch of triangles to know they have three sides. It's true by definition. Then on the right, you have a posteriori knowledge, which is completely dependent on experience. The only way you know sugar is sweet is because at some point you tasted it. You can see how this all starts to click together, right? A posteriori knowledge is always going to be empirical, while a priori knowledge often forms the basis for that extra empirical reasoning.
All right, I know we've covered some pretty big ideas. Empirical versus extra-empirical, falsifiability, a priori. So what's the point? How does any of this help you in the real world? Well, let's package all of this up into a simple, practical toolkit.
And here it is, a super simple three-step method for looking at the structure of any belief, whether it's one of your own or someone else's. First,
You just ask, what's the justification here? Is it based on evidence from the world, or is it based on something else? Second, you apply the test. Is this the kind of claim that can actually be tested, or is it unfalsifiable? And finally, third, you pinpoint the source. Is this known through pure reason, or did it come from experience?
Now, this is so important. This toolkit is not a weapon, okay? The goal is not to go out and win arguments or prove that you're right and everybody else is wrong. That's not what this is for. The real value here is clarity. By running a belief through these steps, you can instantly understand the real nature of a disagreement. Are you and the other person actually debating empirical, falsifiable evidence? Or are you two starting from completely different, unfalsifiable, extra-empirical starting points? Just knowing that can change everything. It helps you see where the real disconnect is.
So here is your takeaway. I want you to pick one belief that you hold really strongly. It could be about politics, it could be something spiritual, or just a core opinion you have. Now, honestly, run it through this toolkit. Is this justification empirical? Is it falsifiable? Is it knowing through reason or experience? You might actually be surprised by what you find. And that kind of self-awareness, well, that's the first step toward truly understanding not just what we believe, but why.